we didn't use it on the air yesterday, but they sent a question in, who wrote the book of James? My question is, who wrote the book of love? No, but who wrote the book of James? I'm like, that's hilarious. Who's James? But now, who was James? James was his half brother.
And you know, when I told my best friend about Mary having and Jesus having siblings, she was completely floored.
Because the Catholic Church teaches that. The Catholic Church teaches that Joseph was married beforehand and had those children before he got married.
Yeah, I don't believe that for a second. The reason why I don't believe that, and besides they believe that
Bible
Mary
says it's his brother.
Absolutely, it's his brother. That's what the word says. Anyways, I digress. Going back, they still believe in the purity and that Mary remained a virgin throughout her whole entire life. How many of you know married couples, they don't stay virgins?
No, they don't.
Amen. Plus, he had brothers. Well, they say, well, how she can still be divine?
Sister.
And sister.
Yes.
They say that, well, she can still be divine. Well, how many of you know when Jesus went to Nazareth, it said that he wasn't able to perform many miracles there, right? We're taught that it was because of the unbelief, because when they seen him, say, is this Jesus, the carpenter? You know, and that he weren't able to do these great things. And I remember the brother of Jesus came to him and said, look, your own mother and your brother won't speak to you. What do you have to say? And Jesus looked behind him and said, you see these people here? These are my brothers. These are my mothers. These are my sisters. These are the people that I'm taking care of and that are taking care of me. In a way of supporting them, you know, and showing that they believe.
They also said that his mother and his brother thought he was beside himself.
And his mother and his...
Turn your microphone.
I'll just keep it touching the mic. And when I keep on pulling the microphone away, so I'm just going to have to do this.
Remember, if you can't hear yourself like you are right now, we have a hard time.
Amen. So Jesus even saying, you know, who's my mother? Look, these are my mothers and my brothers. They're the ones that I'm taking care of. You know, if Jesus himself denying the divinity of Mary isn't enough, I don't know what to say to you.
That's right.
Amen. Now, then going on, I'm going to touch another big issue as we continue. It says, as we said before, I read that verse. It says, for do I now persuade man or God? Or do I seek to please men? For if I yet please man, I should not be a servant of God. Meaning, I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm here to tell you the truth. Now, and I love this because he touches on his story a little bit, which is also in Acts, I believe it's Acts 10, chapter 10, if you'd like to read it. If I might be mistaken, it might be 9. It was, all right, reading on. It says, But I certify you, brethren, that the gospel which was preached of me is not after man. For I neither received it of man, neither was I taught it, but by the revelation of Jesus Christ. Now I'm going to read this next verse before I go into what that means. It says, for ye have heard of my conversation in times past in the Jews' religion, how that beyond measure I persecuted the church of God and wasted it. Now, and how many of you know his name wasn't always Paul? How many of you know his name was Saul? Amen. How many of you know about the story when he was on his way on the road to Damascus? It said the Lord appeared before him in a flash of light, and he was blind, and he said, who are you, Lord? Knowing darn well who the Lord was. He just manifested himself. For those of you who don't know, it says that he was against, let me read this again. It said that he persecuted the church of God and wasted it. Meaning, this man was a mass murderer. He literally went to the Christians of the early church, gathered them up, and led them. That's what he was doing on his way to the road to Damascus. He was going there to capture the people, to lead them to Jerusalem, to have them persecuted and killed. He went to these particular places that were masses of people and led them to their death. He was literally a mass murderer.
He was involved in the first murder.
Absolutely.
With Stephen.
Yeah.
He held the coats of the gentlemen who, or I don't want to say, maybe not gentlemen, the men. that cast the stones on
Stephen. Yeah, and going back to that passage, you know, when he was telling them, he was bold. The anointing was upon him. When he said, you're a stiff-necked generation, you're just like your fathers, you ain't going to listen to what the word has to say. it said that they stopped up their ears and they gnashed with their teeth. They didn't want to hear the truth. So they picked up stones to stone him. When they were doing all these things, he said that he stared steadfastly up into heaven, and he seen that the Son was standing next to the Father. And they knew that was in judgment, meaning that he's standing up to do something. And they didn't want to hear any of that. So that's when they took stones. And they killed it, or they were attempting to kill this man. Now then, how many of you know when you are stoned, no, it's not partially, you're killed.
Yes.
There was times where he himself was stoned.
Yes.
Amen? Meaning he was dead. We could gather from, I believe it's 2 Corinthians. He even says it himself. He says, I was called up into the third heavens. Oh, I feel
He
he's
said there was a man.
What's that?
He spoke in the third person.
He spoke in the third person.
There was a man.
But it's implied that it was him. No, he says that there was a man that was called up into the third heavens. Whether in the spirit or in the body, I don't know. Meaning, it was himself. How would he know,
And if you pinpoint that back,
Yes.
it goes back to the time that, I think it was 13 years ago, he said.
Yep.
It goes back to around the time that he was stoned in Ephesus.
Yep.
So that a lot of people believe that he was actually stoned to death.
Yeah, outside the walls.
Yep.
Wasn't it outside the walls?
Yeah, he was stoned to death, and then it says even if he wasn't stoned to death, the city got him walked to the next city.
Yep. He got up and he dusted himself off and went to the next city. Implying that when they do this, they stone you to death. They kill you.
Yeah,
But not only did he survive, he was able to withstand sustaining injury.
Oh.
That he was able to get up and he was unaffected and he began to walk to the next town. Amen. It was in this time
I think
that
the Lord took him out.
I
took him
believe
to
that.
heaven for
I
a few
believe that
minutes.
myself, Tim. I was just getting to it. I believe that in that time where he was dead, because he had to have been dead for some time for that crowd to disperse. Because if there was movement, if there was life, they
But
continued
they
to
still
throw
throw
stones until he was
stones, yeah.
dead. So I believe in that time that he was called up into the third heavens. Amen. But that's a whole other passage. That's a whole other scripture. I think I touched on it once before. That's a message for another day. But continuing on. Let me see, where was it? In the 11th verse. 13th verse. For ye have heard of my conversations in times past in the Jews' religion, how that beyond measure I persecuted the church of God and wasted it, and profited the Jews' religion above many my equals in mine own nation, being more exceedingly zealous of the traditions of my father. Meaning, what he's saying in this passage is, first of all, you knew where I came from. That I was a Pharisee amongst Pharisees, that I was far more advanced than any of my brothers, meaning under the law. Meaning he was the one that was envied by the Pharisees, that he followed the law to the T, to the best of his abilities. He's saying, I fought the Christian church in the beginning for my beliefs and what I stood for. And before I was converted and I was able to see life. So don't talk to me about the law. Don't try to tell me about the law, because I lived it. And I knew that it wasn't enough. So when you're trying to come in here and pollute the gospel, I'm not standing for it. So he's emphasizing this point, that I was a wicked man and I served the law, but I led these people to the slaughter. I was a mass murderer, in the name of the law. Not in the name of, the relationship and the love that God has. Like I said, going back to that covenant of death, amen? Continuing on, it says, in the 15th, but when it pleased God, who separated me from my mother's womb and called me by his grace. Now this is the third point where it's going to be one of those topics. This passage where it says that he separated me, it doesn't mean that he physically, or that God delivered him from his mother's womb, as in it was a natural birth. That, that separation, let me see, I'll read it again. Who separated me, meaning he set me apart in my mother's womb. There's a passage, I think I read it down. No, I didn't. Oh, it's in Jeremiah 1:5. It says, before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou comest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee and ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. Now that's speaking to Jeremiah. But in this passage, it means that he had a calling in his life before he was formed in the womb. Now, what's the third hot topic issue? Well, let's talk about abortion. Amen. Now that's a touchy subject for people. Amen. I got news for you.